Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lion, the Way, and the War, where we discuss Jesus, His church, and the spiritual battle that surrounds us all. My name is Craig Allison, and I'll be your host. All right. Well, it's been a few months since we did our last episode. There are some reasons, though, for that pause. And so one of the reasons is our show sponsor, our primary sponsor, Central Church of Christ in Chattanooga, Tennessee, located at 400 Vine Street, has had some changes. Some of you know we transitioned to a new pulpit minister, which happens to be me. And so that has kept me pretty busy as I've worked myself into that new role. And simultaneously, we had somebody filling in my old role as the campus minister at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. And so that transition process was taking place. So that I've been really, really busy doing some other things and getting situated with that. In addition to that, I am finishing up my master's degree in counseling. So that has kept me pretty busy. And I'm in my final weeks, 5 weeks actually, to be exact, as of this week, and that actually leads me to today's episode and guest because it's related to my graduate studies. And so joining me today is Benjamin Jagels. He is an alumni of the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga and graduated with a sports outdoor recreation tourism management degree, and he has recently returned to Chattanooga after working at Yellowstone National Park and is currently living in the Ooltewah-Collegedale area. Benjamin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Craig. I'm excited to be here.
Excited to have you. This is not your first podcast. You back in COVID, we did a Zoom podcast with you and don't tell me his name, but Bobby, with
Yes,
Bobby,
yes.
also a student at UTC at that time. So I'm super glad to have you here because, like I mentioned, my finishing up my grad school in counseling crosses paths with the topic we're going to talk about today. So I want to set that up for our listeners before we actually get into the show. And what I'm actually talking about. So this final project that I'm working on in order to complete my degree, as odd as this may sound, pun intended, it's about tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears. And so the listeners are like, why in the world are you doing a podcast on tinnitus? And so we're going to get into all that and unpackage it. There's a spiritual dimension here that we're going to talk about. But for those that don't know, I'm passionately interested in tinnitus or tinnitus. I'm going to say tinnitus for the rest of the show, just because I have an audiologist that would be mad if I didn't say it that way. If you want to say tinnitus, you say tinnitus. I'll say tinnitus.
Potato, potato.
Potato. Anyway, since 2021, since I had COVID for the second time, I developed ringing in the ears, loud ringing in the ears. It was constant. It didn't go away, and it has not gone away. And it is absolutely infuriating, can be. And so I've been dealing with that. And in our conversations, I found out you also are a sufferer, a victim. I'm going to say so. You're a victim of tinnitus, and so I want to talk a little bit about that. And so before we get into that, I just want to share some information. Not as, hey, feel sorry for us, but just I think there's some facts here that need to be stated, and so everybody has an idea of kind of what we're talking about when we talk about tinnitus. It's not just, oh, you have a slight ringing in your ears. It's a little bit more than that. So in my research, I've discovered that people that have tinnitus have higher risk levels of anxiety and depression. And it can be very impactful, especially if it's a chronic condition, which means you don't get any relief from it. Some people, it's intermittent, so they have ringing sometimes they don't. But for those that have chronic tinnitus, you don't get rid of it, and especially in quiet times, it's very prevalent. You hear it at nighttime. The times when you're trying to sleep, it impacts your sleep too. For those that don't know, Kent Taylor, he was the founder of Texas Roadhouse. He committed suicide just a few years ago, back in March 18th of 2021, because of unbearable tinnitus, and he had the chronic condition. I want to share a few stats here with the audience. Among the 21.4 million subjects who reported tinnitus within the past 12 months, 26% also had problems with anxiety in that same period. Comparatively speaking, among those who did not report tinnitus, only had 9% report of anxiety problems. And then similarly, 25% of tinnitus sufferers reported problems with depression in the preceding 12 months, while only 9% of those without tinnitus reported depression symptoms. So there's a strong correlation between some mental health issues, anxiety, depression, insomnia, and some of that can be pretty severe for those that do suffer from tinnitus versus those who do not suffer from tinnitus. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at. That's the direction we're going to take. So I want to just kind of turn things over to you, Benjamin, and ask you a few questions. First of all, just share your backstory. When did you first notice tinnitus? When did you get it?
Yeah. Well, I've always, for as long as I could remember, since probably middle school, I've noticed it in quiet times when it's like super silent times. Yeah. But I guess the term you get used to, it's called habituation. I guess I was like so used to it, I didn't really notice it because it was so not so quiet. Yeah. I didn't really notice it. Then about 4 and 5 months ago, I guess at this point, I developed some issues with my left ear, and which led to some minor hearing loss, as well as increased tinnitus in that ear. And as you mentioned, I was thrown into a state of severe depression and anxiety. As we were talking about earlier, because we've been meeting probably about 2 months now, yeah. Maybe every other week, yeah. Just checking in on everything and whatnot. Complete 180 from where I was like a month and a half ago till now. So yeah, definitely has taken a big toll on me, but I'm starting to see that light at the end of the tunnel. So.
Yeah. Well, going back and I was, through our dialogue, through our discussion, I sensed that there were some issues going on, and so you were receptive to me reaching out to you and trying to get together and just get you out of the kind of the funk that you can get in pretty easily. And I don't want to beat this horse, but I don't, for those that don't have it, I don't think that we fully understand like the mental toll that it can take when you don't have any relief, when it's never silent in your head. And people have asked me, what's it like? If you've ever been to a loud concert and you leave and you have that buzzing, that high-pitched ringing in your ears, after a few hours, you're like, man, this is super annoying. Imagine never, ever being able to cut that sound off. It's there all the time. And like you mentioned, it, when it's quiet, that's when you hear it even more. So you have to be very intentional about, doing things that will mitigate or suppress that sound. And so there's a whole lot of different techniques and things that I know you've been working through, some of it with cognitive behavioral therapy and other items. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. But before we do, I want to ask you, how has tinnitus impacted your social life? Because you're a young guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're, so or has it impacted your social life?
Definitely has. As you mentioned, I worked out in Yellowstone National Park. This past summer, I got I worked for the employee recreation program. Mm-hmm. That was very socially oriented, and I would label myself as pretty social guy, and
Even with bears, you're social with bears.
Even with bears,
Yeah,
yeah.
Benjamin faced down a bear on a hike in Yellowstone. So that's an interesting story that we side tangent. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I can talk about it real quick, so everybody knows. I think it's a pretty cool, interesting story.
It is. It is. Yeah.
So I went. It was called crap. What hike was it? Avalanche Peak is the name of it. And even when you hear that, you're like, wow, Avalanche Peak.
Do I really want to walk on a place called Avalanche Peak?
That sounds pretty daunting. Anyways, I asked. It was on when you're out there, that they say it's like one of those hikes, like a bucket list hike. Like you got to do this hike when you're out in Yellowstone. And I was working at Old Faithful, so the geyser, the famous geyser.
Yeah.
So this hike was about an hour and a half away from Old Faithful in the park, and I was asking around. Everybody's like, I'm busy. And I'm like, I'm just going to go anyways. And it's grizzly bear country, and you're not supposed to hike alone. But my supervisor was like, I've hiked 500 miles alone in Yellowstone. And he's like, I haven't had any issues. I was like, okay. I was going on solo hikes. I was doing fine, So I get up early, get there about 8:30 to the trailhead, and I'm starting, and I go up through, the first quarter mile to half mile is, one, it's 2 miles straight up.
Yeah.
2,000 feet of elevation, gang.
Yeah.
And the first part is through woods. So I'm walking through the woods, keeping my head down. And then I look up, and there's a freaking bear walking across. And if I hadn't looked up and saw the bear, because it was sniffing on the ground, I would have ran straight into it on the trail.
Yeah, not good.
So, I froze. I stopped. You carry bear spray. I took the safety off my bear spray, and I was ready to spray a bear if it was going to charge at me. But I got its attention, because you're supposed to make yourself known, and you don't run because that triggers its fight or flight. Yeah. I mean, it's prey instinct.
Yeah.
And it looked up at me, and it just sprinted the other way. And any sane person probably would have
turned around
and went back, and I was like, I just drove an hour and a half, and I'm gonna do the rest of this hike. So I did the rest of the hike, scared, with my bear spray out,
spray in hand the whole time.
But I made it to the top, and I was the only one at the top, and it was really cool at the top of this mountain. But yeah, anyways, back to your original question.
Yeah,
tinnitus took a big toll on me socially. A lot of people withdraw, and that's definitely what I did until probably 2 months ago. You can definitely get isolated, and it's a very isolating experience.
Yeah, I bet it is, and it impacts your family too. I mean, to whatever extent, it's unless you don't have family or anybody else, and you're truly alone. But for you, you've got supportive family, you've got friends, me and other people. It's something that can definitely impact those that care for you and love you. It takes a toll not just on you, but on the people around you as well.
Yeah.
From a social dimension. Physically, any issues there?
Yeah, in the summer I hiked 240 miles in the Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks. So I was probably the best shape in my life.
Yeah.
And then tinnitus happens, and I kind of went. I've been zero activity, because the depression part and not getting out and whatnot. So that big change for me.
Yeah.
Slowly getting back into that stuff though. But yeah, definitely big physical change for me too as well.
Yeah. So it's odd to me that something that is seemingly as insignificant as a noise in your ear all of a sudden encompasses the social dimension of your life, the physical dimension of your life. We haven't talked about the mental aspect of that, but you've mentioned it a little bit as far as, having some depression and anxiety issues that are resulting from that. That's that's a pretty significant thing to go from where you were at in Yellowstone, and then 2 months later you're a different person, right? I mean, because it's impacted all of these different areas of your life. I want to shift gears a little bit, because this is it's a faith-based podcast, and for me the most important dimension obviously is the spiritual aspect of our lives. And I don't want to short sell or minimize how, obviously we're talking about tinnitus, okay, but any issue that may be going on in a person's life that is chronic in nature. It could be pain related, that begins to tear a person down. So in these different dimensional aspects of their life, physical, mental, social, and then we run across the spiritual dimension of our life and the impact that things have on that aspect. So talk a little bit about that as far as your spirituality and the journey that you've gone through because of tinnitus.
Yeah. I feel like when you go through something like that, our natural reaction is to go away from God. And I think that's human nature too. And I definitely, my faith took a back seat to it, because I didn't, I feel like a lot of people, whatever they go through, they're like, oh, like, why would God allow this to happen to me? Why me? This, that. But slowly starting, come back into that, prioritizing my faith more. But it definitely had a huge negative impact on my spiritual life. Definitely.
Yeah, and for a person that's young like you, I don't see how you don't ask the question, like, why is this happening to me? I mean, because you've got your whole life in front of you, and here you are at in your early 20s, and you're thinking, okay, so the diagnosis, the long-term perspective here is that there's not really a cure for tinnitus, at least not now, not a definitive cure. There's things that we can help, that will mitigate it, and coping mechanisms that we're going to talk about here in a second. But from that aspect, it's like, well, man, this is something I've got to deal with now for the rest of my life, and I'm young. I haven't done things that I want to do, and so how is this going to impact the rest of my life, and my outlook towards God? Because God's in control of everything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if we want to just get down to brass tacks, I mean, people of faith should believe that God can do anything, that God can heal anything, that God can change anything. And so you pray and you pray and you pray. I have, since 2021, I've been praying, hey, God, could you please take this noise out of my head? And it's still there. So if we're being really brutally honest, and for those that are listening to this podcast now, maybe similar circumstances where you've prayed and you still have these issues, right? It's like you have to work through the significance of what that means to your faith, okay? And you have to reconcile the fact that God may not fix you. He may not heal that you want healed, right? And so what do you do with that? And I can assume that for a young person who has their life ahead of you, that's particularly daunting when you face the reality of that. Feedback on that?
Yeah, it makes me think of, I think it's 2 Corinthians, when Paul talks about his thorn and how he, whatever that was, he pleaded with God, 3 times for God to take this thorn away from him,
and he doesn't.
And he's like, my grace is, I think he says, my grace is sufficient in your weakness.
Yeah.
So that's what, that's what I've, been, what I think of and whatnot. And also I'm like, I can still do the things I like to do. It's not like I don't have any legs or I'm blind or anything, so there's people that have it, worse off than me, so.
Yeah, and that's something that I don't know that I want to get fully into, but there could be people listening like, why, dude, who cares? You have ringing in your ears. I can't see.
Mm-hmm.
You want to trade places with me? Because I'll do that, right? But that's we need to be very careful with that, because while that's true logically, there's like it could be worse, right? We get that, but we can't minimize what a person is going through.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because it's real to you. It's like, yes, I do have my eyesight, but I also have bumblebees in my ears nonstop, and I can't escape it.
Yeah.
And that's, for some people, that's ongoing torture. And so, how do you compare?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I get that.
So yeah, I want to be I want to be sensitive and careful that anybody listening doesn't take that the wrong way and think that I'm not minimizing anybody's issues that we deal with, but from that spiritual dimension, having that attitude that you mentioned, because I was going to go there, but you brought it up first, understanding that there are things that happen to us. I don't think God purposely afflicted you or me with tinnitus. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be a faith weakening experience. It can actually be a faith strengthening exercise. So I want to talk a little bit about that and what that looks like. That initial frustration, you're like, okay, I have hope that this is going to get better. We can fix this. We can do these things, and I'm going to be cured. Okay. And then it's almost like false hope, and you if you're like me, you go through that letdown of like, okay, maybe this is not going to get fixed. Maybe this is something I have to deal with. Yeah. And so it's almost like worse to have that hope, because then that hope is yanked from you. And so now you're like, okay, rest of my life, what am I going to do? And as we process through that, we finally, I got to a point where it's like, all right, what am I going to do with this? And how does my relationship look with Jesus? How do I use this for his glory? What can I do to be a resource, a boon, a help, an encouragement for other people who are experiencing the same thing? Because here's the deal. Nobody gets through this life with a perfect life. Okay? And so what Jesus has taught us is that as a community of believers, we are to get together with each other and be a family, share that fellowship, which means that my strengths make up for somebody's weakness, and somebody's weakness is made better because I suffer alongside of them with the same thing. They have that unity, that bond. And so as you've kind of journeyed through this, you're beginning to pick up these pieces of understanding what it means to have that community, like being surrounded by other people that understand, hey, this is part of our human condition, and how God gets glorified in that. Okay, that's what Paul was talking about. What Jesus was saying is you have an opportunity here, even though you have this diminished capacity, this thorn in your flesh, whatever it is, to continue being an advocate for me, because people will look and recognize, oh, even in a person's weakness and trials and tribulations, they glorify God. And I can't think of a better way to do that than with community, with other people, because it's not a lone endeavor. So thoughts about that? Comments?
I definitely agree with you, and you made some good points.
Yeah. Speaking to that, we're you and I, and I'm blessed. This is I should have said this a second ago. This is exactly what I'm talking about as far as getting together and sharing each other's griefs and burdens and trials. Is there's this synergistic thing that begins to happen. You're like, you know what? Why don't we do this? why don't we talk about this? This is the reason we're sitting here today, is because there's probably other people listening that are benefiting from this and being like, you know what, I don't have to be sitting at home alone. There's people that understand. So you and I began talking about having some type of group that meets together and just talks about, the stuff that's out there, the coping mechanisms. I've discovered some things. You discovered some things. You're doing some online stuff with an expert in that field, who also has tinnitus. You told me for a long time now. He's like 65.
Yeah, he's had it for like 30 plus years.
Yeah, and considered an expert in that area.
He developed the cognitive behavioral therapy for tinnitus, because there wasn't because he was a therapist, but there wasn't anything like that. He looked around there. He's like, there isn't anything like that. So he developed his own program, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. So there's resources out there, and I think as a faith-based community getting together, pooling our resources and understanding there's things out there, and just talking about it helps. Knowing that other people get you, they understand what it's like to have that, and I think that's extremely helpful. So, where are you at now? Talking about resources, and as we have worked through some of the issues here, where are you at now versus where you were? And if I'm asking a question that you don't want to answer, you feel uncomfortable answering, we can edit this out, and it doesn't have to be.
No, I can answer that. I'd say I'm definitely like 180 from where I was at the start of this till now. Definitely, I think big part, you encouraged me to, and when we first met and I said I had it, your jaw, I remember your jaw dropping on the floor. You're like, what? I have it too? Yeah. And whatnot. And, you've encouraged me to get out, and I've enjoyed us getting lunch together and talking about it, and even connecting with some other people that have it and whatnot. Just in encouragement and stuff. So I'm feeling way better from where I was at. Definitely, it's not doom and gloom anymore I was. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and that's huge. I mean, just being able to get out, especially if you suffer with that tremendous burden of just depression, and it's hard to break that cycle and get out. And you did, and that's massive. That's huge. So along those lines, I want to talk a little bit as we're wrapping things up here. I want to talk a little bit about what you and I are doing, hopefully together on this next step, what that looks like, and how that ties into the program that I'm working with now as part of my graduate degree, is to have a group that meets. We're probably looking to meet in the next 3 to 4 weeks here at Central Church of Christ, Vine Street. We're going to put, actually it's up there, if you are interested in reaching out, getting more information, and being part, if you suffer from tinnitus, we're going to have a group meeting here at Central Church of Christ, and I'm going to try to get the guy you're talking to, the expert, to provide some information and resources, and maybe we can get him to zoom in on that. We're going to provide a meal. We're looking to have about between 10 and 15 people, so it's the first ones that respond are the ones that are going to get that slot. But we will meet at Central Church of Christ, 400 Vine Street. We'll announce the date and the specific date and time. But what I need for you to do, if you are interested in being part of this group, if you have tinnitus and are looking for some resources, then this is the people that need to respond and send an email. Just give us your contact information and let us know that you're interested in being part of this group that's going to meet. Email us at thelionthewayandthewar@gmail.com, all lowercase, and we will respond to the email as soon as we get it. So again, that's going to be happening pretty quickly. So email us at thelionthewayandthewar@gmail.com. Okay, so folks, Benjamin, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me
and sharing your side of this and the stuff that you've gone through. I'm assuming you'll be available to be as part of that meeting.
I plan on attending.
Yeah,
so
because you've got other things that I'd like for you to share as part of that. So this, the resource part of that, and some of the techniques that you've discovered, that I've discovered, that have helped mitigate some of the impact of tinnitus. So if you're watching, give us some feedback. Share with us information as we start to kick this show back into more of a normal broadcast again. You can find us on, we have a YouTube channel, so you can see the stream there, and obviously you can listen to this on the different social media platforms that we have available. Okay, so that's it for today. Consider becoming a sponsor of the episode. Share, like, subscribe to our channel if you would like to. And then we always close out with a verse, Matthew chapter 6, verse 34. This is your favorite verse. Therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. I can amen to that. Until our next episode of The Lion, the Way, and the War, love one another, be kind to one another, and remember the Creator of the universe loves you so much that he gave up his only Son for you. Have a blessed day, everybody.